Okay, a piece of steel that I have been waiting for just arrived. It's a dimension I usually don't use. This is 3/32, 154 CPM stainless from Crucible. So with these raw materials, I'm going to make a knife, and it may be a one of. I don't know. If someone sees it, likes it, and they want one, well, sure, I'll make another one. But a buddy of mine I was in the Navy with, friendship that started more than 30 years ago, contacted me after he saw a picture or two of my knives and asked me if I would make him a fillet knife. He wants a large one, 9-inch cutting edge, and he has rather large hands. I had him send me a picture of his hand. He had laid a tape across there, and his hands, he's a big fella. His hands, where mine go maybe 3 1/4 right there, his hands are 4 1/4. So the handle part of the knife that your hand would go into, such as like this knife, this dimension is going to have to be larger. So taking that all into account, we're going to use just about all of this piece of steel. We may have about a 3-inch piece of scrap. But here are the raw materials. Obviously the blade stock. And then this is 4/16 stainless bar. It's going to be used for the guards. And then I'm going to go with 3/32 pins on my handle material. And I'm also going to use 3/32 to pin the guard to the blade after it comes out of heat treatment. And then for the handle for this knife, I want to go with this canvas natural tan micarta. And one of the nice properties about this, one, it's waterproof, and two, besides being durable, when this is contoured and then polished, it is still going to be grippy when it's wet, and that's an important factor, especially for something like a fillet knife that is going to be, it's going to be slimy. There's no other nice way to say that. And then we're going to have a 1/4-inch thong hole in the back, to attach a lanyard to it or whatever. And then we're going to have a well wax and oil impregnated sheath made for this knife to protect the knife and to protect him. So we're going to get started. We'll go through the design phase. I have some shapes in mind, and we'll take it from that to aluminum pattern to layout, the whole shebang. But I'm going to kind of put everything that I've been doing sort of on a back burner while I make this knife. It won't take me long start to finish if this is all that I'm doing, but I want to get this finished and in the mail to him. So we will get started. Alright, so this is pretty heavy paper that I use for knives and for my sheaths. It makes a durable kind of pattern. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to trace my steel, and then that's what I have to work with. So now I want to lay out some of the major design features of the knife, things that I can't change. I'm going to start 1 inch from the end, and then from that I'm going to give myself 4 1/4 inches. So his hand has to be able to fit into there. And then my blade, or my guard stock, is 3/4 inch. So I'm going to allow for a little bit of handle to come up, meet the guard, and probably going to allow, just probably 1/4 inch more for guard, and I'm going to go with 3/8. I can change all of this after I start drawing, but I want to make sure that I allow, just enough. His hand has to curl there, so I'm kind of looking at something like that, and I want a nice gripping belly. And this is going to contour up. We're going to incorporate the guard into that contour. Now I'll take this over after I cut this piece out, and I'll fine-tune my drawing. Playing with the design right now. I used my erasers on my pencil long before the lead's worn out. Maybe something a little bit more. This is why you need to have a good eraser. I said good. After we get this committed to an aluminum pattern, this becomes, you know, fire starter. But I have some design elements I'm going to look at. And starting with the handle, the knife blade shape is going to take care of itself. So I have the pattern worked down in aluminum, and I've got the position of the guard laid out. And so I'm just marking my pinholes now. And you see I kind of play with the design, and I do this mainly by eye, but I want the pins to be an equal distance from the edges of the knife. So I just took a little scribe and run it against there and marked my line. So I'm just taking a automatic center punch and I'm marking these, and then I'm going to go over and deepen them with a regular center punch, and then I'm going to drill them. Okay, I've got some bluing on the knife steel itself, and I've got my holes all laid out. There's some couple extra scribe marks here, but I've got a little center punch mark where I want each hole drilled. I've got the pinholes for my guard also laid out. So I'm getting ready to go deep in these with a center punch, and I'm going to drill every one of these to the right size. Now remember, 3/32 pin. I want these to be kind of small and delicate looking on this knife. So I've got to keep that in mind before I go reaching for the 1/8 inch bit like I always do. Okay, there are the holes laid out and drilled, and I used 3/32 just so my 1/8 inch transfer punch, because I'm so used to using it, won't go through here. So it's going to remind you, hey stupid, these are 3/32 holes. Should I ever make this knife again? So now I am this is dry, so I'm ready to lay this out onto the steel, and I'll do it the same way that I always do. I'm going to go get a small clamp this thing up, and I might clamp this in 2 places because it's so long, and get it transferred, and then get this sawn out, get my holes drilled, get it profiled, and then as we go, as I grind, I'm going to be checking the flexibility of the blade, just to see if I need to reduce the thickness at all. I think I'm going to be able to get that thin enough and nice enough to where that's going to flex, and be a decent knife. So I have my pattern clamped to the stock. Just making a good deep scribe line. And I'll take this over to my little bench anvil and transfer these holes with a 3/32 center punch. You want to scratch pretty deeply if you're, just in case your dicing gets rubbed off. Alright, so I'm going to have to remember this corner will come down, so I'm not going to complete the scribe right at that point. Just going to bring it down, and then I'll finish the rest. I'll put the paper pattern on there after I transfer my holes. I've got my holes drilled. I'm just going to take the paper pattern and complete this little corner down here. Just matching everything up. There. That's what that corner is going to look like. Alright. I've got to drill this out to 1/4 inch, and then we can get to profiling. Okay, I hope you can hear me over the noise of that pedestal fan behind me, but it's the only thing that makes it bearable here in the shop. So, holes are drilled, and it is profiled, And at this point, yeah, I like to hold it and just look over what I've done. I still have a little bit of layout line here and here along the back, and I'll take that down when I'm satisfied with everything else. And so far I'm liking it. This is a big fish fillet knife, so I think it's going to be okay. Now, one other thing I have to do, and I don't know if you can see that or not, but this steel, as it comes from Crucible, is only Blanchard ground. Pretty rough ground. They just do that to get the decarb scale off when they make this stuff. And that's pretty rough. So what I have to do is I have to flat grind this and get it all cleaned up on either side, so I can have something that I can really know that is my true side or edge of my work, so then I can lay out my cutting lines and everything else that I have to do. But I can't go much further until I get this Blanchard grinding marks off here. And it's just a slow, even process on my platen. And I'll take it down to about 320, something like that, get it nice and flat, and then I start my layout. But it's looking good. It feels good. It's going to lose a lot of weight as we grind the bevels on this blade, but I think Brian's going to like it. That's the name of my buddy from the Navy. So, next step, grind off this Blanchard mark and get it to something we can lay cutting edge out on. Okay, I'm still contending with that fan, but I'm telling you, it's a hot day. Without it, I wouldn't be out here. I have all the Blanchard grinding off, at least till I'm satisfied that I have a nice true surface. And this blade measures, right now it's 110 thousandths, and that's pretty consistent. Just wherever I check, it's 110. So that's good. Now I can proceed to lay out my cutting edges off the surface plate and know that the edge that I'm starting with here is fairly true. Now, is this straight? Well, it looks straight, and there are no obvious horrible bends in it. But to be honest with you, I don't care if it's straight. My surface plate is flat, and that guides the grind, and that's going to determine the finished product. So obviously, when we lay our cut lines out, or our bevel guides, where our cutting edge is going to be, they're going to be twin lines. And we grind to those, we stay to those, and those guide our job. So yeah, the knife will be as straight as my surface plate is flat, and it's a flat plate. Also, on this knife, there are going to be two other things. One is going to be twin lines back here to grind to. From about this point back, it's going to taper, and just it looks nice on a knife like this, and just a tapered tang down to about half its thickness now. Just over 50 thousandths or so. And then on the back of the knife here, the spine, since this is a long, slender blade, I'm going to scribe a halfway mark all the way down. And I'm going to eyeball that as I grind to make sure I'm not creeping in too close to that center line. I want this to be symmetrical. I don't want this blade to curl when it goes into heat treatment. So we're getting ready to lay out and start grinding our bevels and tapering our tang. And then when we get to heat treatment on this steel, the only other thing I do differently, other than the temperature and all of that's different, but the treatment of the steel itself, I'm going to get this thing up to about a 600 grit grind before heat treatment. And then I'm going to wrap it in heat treating foil, nice and tightly. And we'll quench with it still in the foil. And when we take it out, you'll see the difference it makes. It'll be discolored, but it won't be all black and scaly like my 01 knives are. But I don't have a whole lot of stock here, so I don't want to have to go grinding a bunch of decarb off after heat treatment, which is why I'm going to do the foil.